Okay, Al, it's our favorite segment of the week. We got to talk about the team that we love most.
Lions fans, that's all right.
That's all right. Um, let's talk about what went right with this regime in their first year. What went wrong? Where can they improve? Where?
More specifically, 3 things they got right, 3 things they got wrong. Because we could talk about what they got right and wrong for hours,
Yeah.
but
We don't have that kind of time.
yeah, we're making this kind of a BuzzFeed article, list them kind of thing.
Yeah.
So 3
Okay.
things they got right, 3 they got wrong.
Okay. Well, why don't you start? What do you think they got right or wrong?
All right, I'll start with the right. I'm going to try and kind of go back and forth here.
Yeah.
And I know we just finished yammering on about them, but I will say the Stafford trade, they got that right. That was a huge thing as soon as Brad Holmes was brought on.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as, even as soon as Matt Patricia and Bob Quinn were relieved of their duties, Stafford was kind of the big question mark. And like, where does this franchise go now? Because he clearly wants to go somewhere else. And like, he doesn't want to do another rebuild. But we got to do another rebuild because this thing needs to be leveled.
It was stripped down to the bolts.
So Brad Holmes, he makes a trade where, number one, the Lions are well compensated. We get 2 first-round draft picks and a starting quarterback who, throughout the year, we've seen some improvement. And you could start to see the semblance of an idea that Jared Goff could be an answer under the right circumstances if he continues to improve. So that's a total win as far as value goes.
100%.
And number 2, he got Stafford to a place where Stafford is happy. Stafford's clearly playing for a Super Bowl now, which, that was the goal. And I think it was a win-win. It's about as good as you can do in this kind of situation. And there's been a lot of situations with Lions superstars in the past where they've, you got a Barry situation, a Calvin situation where it ends in
not the best terms.
Good way to put it. Yeah. There's a lot of nasty words you could say, but yes, that's it ends badly, ends poorly. But this was the rare occurrence where everybody walks away for the better. So, and that being the first big move of this new regime, I had to note that as one of the things they absolutely did right.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. They did right by Stafford, which honestly, I feel like that was probably the number one thing for me. But the fact that they got very well compensated in return was sensational.
And I think it's interesting too when you look at the Carson Wentz trade.
Yeah,
that happened. I think maybe a couple weeks after, like a month or 2 after. He ultimately did result in the Eagles getting a first-round pick because of the amount of
snaps he played.
Right.
Yep.
And I mean, I feel like the Lions got way better value than the Eagles got for Wentz, even though they both got a first-round pick next year out of it technically. But the Lions are going to have another one, and even though they're late, they're still first-round picks. And I just think that trade is kind of a good comparison to be like, and Wentz is a younger superstar top draft pick quarterback in parentheses, air quotes. Like he should have garnered about the same. You would think he's been in a Super Bowl, or like he got his team to the promised land before he got hurt. Nick Foles won it. You're kind of wincing and stuff as I'm saying this, but it's true.
I'm Carson wincing.
That's good.
We need a drop. We need next. Boom boom.
No, we don't need that.
Just take that audio clip of me doing it.
Won't do that. Anyways, that's my first right.
Okay.
So
I got a good segue.
Okay.
I think something that they did right, sticking it out with Goff.
Okay.
Obviously, everybody knows probably the first half of the season was not good for Jared. And there was probably a lot of pressure on Dan Campbell to bench him and go with Tim Boyle, who would have been 20,000 times as worse.
Well, I don't think anyone was calling for Tim Boyle. I think everyone was calling for David Blau.
Everybody's calling for David Blau, but for some reason, David Blau never saw the field, so it would have been Tim Boyle. But I think it was a really good sign that Dan Campbell was like, I'm sticking to my guns. I'm sticking with this guy. He gives us the best chance to win a game, and we just got to get the monkey off our back, which eventually they did, and eventually he started showing that he can win games, that he can be a competent quarterback back there.
You know what? I was I might not have agreed with that sentiment all year, like because obviously during the earlier portions of the season we were kind of like, woof, this is not going well.
Yeah.
But when Goff went out and when he missed a couple games due to injury or whenever Boyle had to come in, whether it was COVID or injuries or whatever, like I was just like, oh my God, please get Goff back in there.
Yeah.
Like
As
seriously.
soon as Tim Boyle took a snap, everybody was like, okay, this is much worse.
Yeah. And then obviously Goff's his improvements towards the end of the season definitely made it more of a a reasonable play to have him be the starter. And I'm still just going to say that I'm not sure he's the forever option. I'm not sure if I've been totally sold on him yet, but I definitely agree that sticking it out with him and giving him the full year and giving him time next year too to properly make that decision is the way to go. Because if they have lost, if they went 0-5, 0-6, and just said, no, you're done, and then put in Tim Boyle, I mean, we wouldn't have won a game.
No, 100%.
Like Goff definitely had a role to play in the few wins that we did have this year in the games where we were actually close. Like he was definitely a factor, no doubt.
The other nice thing about it was it never, Dan Campbell, I feel like, is just really good at choosing his words. Like he never put a loss on Goff, but he told him, you need to start stepping up in these situations for us.
There were several press conferences where he's like, we need more out of him.
Yeah.
And
it never felt like he was throwing him under the bus or anything like that.
No.
But it just felt like, hey, man, we just need a little bit more. And Goff ended up delivering. And it also wasn't, it would have been so easy for Campbell to go, all right, let's go with Tim Boyle and keep the play calling the way that it was.
Yeah.
Instead, Dan Campbell's like, all right, well, let's see what's wrong with the play calling. And that ended up working out perfectly for them.
Credit to Goff, too, because I'm sure a lot of guys in that situation where they get shipped to one of the worst teams in the league and the team's playing bad and then you're not playing great either. I'm sure that would just be a spiral for a lot of guys where they just go, It's done. My career's done. This is a mess. But end of the year, we're talking about him like a viable option. So he did as best as he could do in the circumstances, and it's because he wasn't benched. So
yes.
I totally agree with your point.
What's something that they got wrong?
Got to re-pull my list here. All right, this is a huge one for me. Well, you know what? I have two. I'll get to the huge one in a minute because this is just a natural segue. I should go here.
Okay.
The backup quarterback. Huge F up. I mean, I know that Tim Boyle was bad, and I know that everyone was saying, let's see what we got with David Blau, and then never came to fruition. So, like, why didn't we address that and make that a better situation for the backup? Like, we didn't factor in Goff like, losing time.
Yeah.
We weren't planning on Goff being out for
multiple
weeks and stuff, but, like, you have to plan for that because it's the NFL. And players get hurt all the time, and you need to have your backup, in place. And I remember when Stafford was here, we had Sean Hill for a couple of years who was not great, but he was a serviceable backup at times. You had Chase Daniel, who was, I don't know, ish. I guess that's a broader issue. Why have the Lions not been able to figure out a backup quarterback?
That's a great question.
You know what I mean? Like,
that's a great question.
I don't know. Is it a situation where if they had a backup who was decent and they outshine Goff, you're kind of fucked? Or like, what's the deal? Like, I mean, because why else would you not? I'm sure there's guys on the street who could be better than Tim Boyle. I'm positive.
Yeah. Okay, I thought you were about to say Goff.
Or they could probably have done a low level trade.
Yeah,
where they trade like a running back or a corner or a 7th round pick for just a guy who's like a Nick Mullins or like a competent, just backup.
And the other thing that we maybe they just feel like this team's going to be bad, so why would we go out and get a backup quarterback that like we had to pay more money for when at the end of the day it obviously they're not saying like it doesn't really matter or
because they're not tanking.
It does matter if we win or lose, but at the end of the day, like this team was never going to go to the playoffs.
Yeah, but like it's the NFL. You can't just put a subpar product out there and say, "Oh yeah, we're going to be bad." Like there's too many ticket sales. There's too much revenue.
Yeah,
like it's just like it's not like.
But like in the case of the Cardinals, right? They planned for possible injury and went out and got a serviceable quarterback in Colt McCoy, who won them a couple games, right? And so like that, but I feel like they had that mindset because like they're thinking, hey, we're going to be good this year. We need to think of all possible outcomes. God forbid something happens to Kyler. We need somebody that can step in and run the offense and still win us games.
The Lions
Detroit might not be thinking like that.
Every team should be thinking that way, though. Every team should be thinking, hey,
Sure.
we're trying to win games.
Yeah.
I know we're not tanking. We're trying to win games.
Yeah.
But you're tanking. I know. But like, you need to, I mean, because every single week we were spoon-fed, you know, the narrative. We're competitive.
Tanking.
We're not tanking. We're trying to win games. So do things that are evident of that, I guess, if that's what you're doing. I guess if I had to think about a reason as to why they didn't bring in a more competent backup, maybe it's as simple as just like they didn't want to shake up things around with Goff. They kind of just like didn't want to have a real competitor in there for him to go against because like you have to maximize on Goff. You have to see what you have with him. And if you bring in competition for him,
if you brought in Colt McCoy,
it might make things worse for him, especially if he goes out and Colt McCoy, God forbid, plays decent and plays better. Then no one's going to want Goff back in when you're stuck with Goff for however many years.
And that fat ass contract that he's got. So I agree with that 100%.
And that's something the Lions can never say. They can never ever say that because that would just you just don't do that.
That's a backroom discussion.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, I totally agree with that.
Unsolved mysteries. We did it.
Yeah.
We figured it out. You got a first wrong.
Yeah, you know, this one I feel like is kind of lackluster, and I don't know if I'm really calling out the Lions on this, but I kind of am. We've mentioned it numerous times on the podcast. We're both we go to every home game. We love going to the games. Ford Field this year was abysmal. There was numerous games where the turnout was horrible, and I'm not putting that on the fans because who would want to go see this product?
Lions fans, it's all right.
Yeah, I'm not putting that on the fans because nobody wants to go see this product that they're putting out on the field. Yeah. Totally understandable. I guess this is towards the Lions organization. You need to figure out ways to get people in the seats. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, attendance was pretty pitiful, especially in a year where
we're coming off COVID.
Fans last year.
Yeah, we're coming off COVID.
You would think you would want your fans to come back in droves and come watch the team play, even if they're going to be pretty bad. I mean, look, I don't know. I don't know what you do. I mean, there was no juice for most of this year, and I think only, you know, real football fans who just understand the how the league works and how these teams work, like they're going to understand where we're at and why it's for the better. But like, you know, Johnny Lions fan is not going to go to Ford Field and spend $200 on tickets and then $150 on snacks and booze and like all that stuff, concessions, t-shirts. Like they're not going to do that when they can just go watch the Lions lose at home. So, you know, winning makes everything better, no doubt.
100%.
And I mean, I don't know how they've been keeping fans this steady this long.
Yeah.
Like at least with Stafford, you know, you were kind of just like, well, maybe they got a shot this year. Maybe this is the year.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first year where it's like, okay, he's gone and we're at nuclear meltdown level, and like we're starting over from ground zero. So I guess that's a lot of it. Ford Field also is not, you know, I have a lot of personal attachment to Ford Field, and I like it quite a bit as a stadium. I've been to a couple NFL stadiums and a couple of just like venues, but like, you know, Ford Field's not the greatest stadium in the world. It's not this big draw that's like, oh, it's got all these things you can go and see and do, and like it's got these like sights and sounds and attractions, and like, you know, we were joking about how Pride Plaza was like absolutely dead. like there were a couple games, most games where it was just like The Walking Dead out there. There was just like nobody, and you could like actually feel the energy level so low. So look, long story short, I think they need to start winning games, and they need to have some actual marquee players that people can like actually root for and go watch. And you know, I think the hardest year is behind us, hopefully, and it's only up from here with this regime, but only time will tell, I guess.
Yeah,
cheaper stuff that would help too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know, drop the ticket prices, whatever you got to do. I mean,
they got the power hour. I mean, that's pretty good. Like a lot of teams don't even do that, you know.
Yeah, but you got to get fans in the seats. I'm sick of hearing the Packers fans being louder than us at a home game.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah. What's your next one?
My next right. This is going to be probably the biggest one. That I kind of talked about a lot last week when we were doing our awards for the year, but obviously the hire of Dan Campbell. I think they did a good job with that too. I think there was a lot of question marks when they first hired him, especially since there were actually a lot of good candidates out there for coaches last year.
Yeah.
It was definitely not the choice that I was hoping for initially, or I even
he
knew about
on anybody's radar.
Right. And I got to say, a year in, I've liked for the most part what I've seen. I'll get into some of the other stuff on one of my wrongs, but on the whole, he got a ton out of this roster, like way more than a lot of coaches would get out of this roster in the league. I feel like, I think Urban Meyer is the easy comparison here, just how polar opposite those two situations went. And Urban Meyer's roster was a heck of a lot better than this one.
A heck of a lot better.
And they're picking one and we're picking two. And we talk about all the time how the guys, like, they want to fight for Dan Campbell. He's got that rah-rah mentality, and all the stuff they were kind of pitching with him. I feel like that's the vibe they're throwing out with him. And I don't know how much we bought into it initially, but I will say at this point, a full season in, I can see how this could work.
Yep.
So I think
could not agree more.
First time in a while, since Jim Caldwell, probably, I feel like the coaching is good.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. The other thing I think Dan Campbell did really well is bringing in a great staff around him.
Yeah, no doubt. And a lot of that probably has to do with Brad Holmes and John Dorsey and guys like that. And what's his name? Spielman.
Yeah,
him too. They got a lot of just good football people. In the organization now, and those are big moves. And he's just surrounded by a lot of people who are going to make him better. And those are all the kind of things we were hoping for this year. And I saw enough of it to make me have some faith in this.
Couldn't agree more.
Was it perfect? No. We'll get into it, but no.
Okay. I'm going to go to a wrong. My other wrong.
Okay.
Close games. Obviously saw some wins in close games, such as the Packers and the Vikings, their first win. But there was also a lot of games where they could have won, and one or two things go awry, and maybe they do win, but they didn't. And that is something that they will have to focus on next year, is winning those close games. Obviously, we had, I think, 3 games that we lost off of a last-second field goal, including one that was an NFL record.
Yeah.
But they have to find ways to win those games. For the love of God, if they run prevent in a under 1 minute, they need a field goal situation, and our defense is running prevent, I'm going to scream. But they just got to find win. They got to find a way. That will, you can already tell that the culture is changing there. Winning those close games will improve that tenfold easily.
Yeah. It really helps, players buy in and fans to buy in to what they're pitching and the culture thing. I totally agree. For me, when I think about why they lost a lot of those close games this year, it's purely based on talent. The team, because this, despite the record, is not an NFL caliber roster.
No.
We're signing guys off the street to come and play significant snaps. And Jerry Jacobs is like a feel good story, but you don't want an NFL roster where Craig Reynolds and Jerry Jacobs are like key contributors like that. You don't want that. And a lot of that is just them falling apart because they don't have enough talent to stop a Baltimore Ravens getting that field goal, 49ers from sealing the deal. They got lucky in a couple of games and did make it happen, but it was definitely a lot of close games that could have gone differently. Tim Boyle throwing a interception in the red zone against the Falcons,
exactly
on a game-winning drive potentially. Just bad players. And that's just kind of where we're at. So, definitely a problem, definitely a wrong, but I think it's something with more players in the roster that actually are NFL caliber. I think we'll see less of, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree with that.
A wrong for me, I guess, kind of to piggyback off of that, is play calling. I felt like there were a lot of times where Dan Campbell, I know I kind of just gave him his flowers, but there were a lot of times where he did make bad calls and he did look like a rookie head coach. And sometimes he would be inconsistent with being super aggressive. Sometimes he wouldn't be aggressive at the right times. Sometimes he'd be like head scratchingly aggressive. Sometimes he would run the ball way too much. Sometimes there were screen passes way too much.
Do you think this was mainly front loaded in the season? I feel like that narrative.
That Bears game was pathetic. At Soldier
say.
Field, that game was like, that was the one where I was like,
Yeah.
what is happening? Like, that was like a horrible
Yeah,
game.
yeah.
And they were on a kind of a skid around
Yeah.
that point in the season where things were looking really grim.
I think that he really, I think that narrative kind of died out in the second half of the season. But I totally agree. In that front half of the season, he was making very rookie head coach mistakes.
And I didn't like what I saw, frankly, when they gave him the reins, or he took the reins to call offense. Like,
it took him
initially,
a
like,
couple
I didn't
weeks.
like. I was like, Anthony Lynn is not a bad coach. Like, what are you doing? And like, you've never been a coach before. Like, what are you doing? You've been a tight ends coach and like an interim for the Dolphins for a handful of games. Like, I don't know about this, but yeah, I guess you could say by the end of the year, that definitely kind of was a less of a factor. I guess there were still some calls where I'm like, just take the points. What are you doing? Like, that was kind of consistent throughout the year. But part of it, that's kind of his style too. Like, he's kind of just like a more gutsy play caller, and like sometimes it works and makes sense. But like, when it's 3rd and 13 and you're doing a run up the middle with Swift, for the 18th time, it's like, what are we doing? Like, that makes no sense.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed bag there, but ultimately it got better. But I still got to jot down as a little bit of a wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a wrong that is trending in the right direction.
Which a lot of these are.
Yeah.
So, that's a good sign, I feel like.
Yeah. I think one of the things that they're getting right is the core of this rebuild. I think that Penei Sewell has panned out perfectly. I think that they have a very solid offensive line. They got to figure out a way to stay healthy. And it's starting to show very, very clearly. We averaged 110 yards of rushing a game. Do you know when the last time that happened?
My go-to was Reggie Bush. So
2013.
Yeah, that's my
How about
go-to
that?
guess.
Wow, nailed it. Averaged 112. So I think they're trending in the right direction by building this thing from the inside out. I think the defensive line showed improvements. I feel like it still has a long way to go in generating pressure without blitzing, which is a massive key to the game, being able to rush forward and get pressure on the quarterback. But I think that they have some players. They obviously were missing Romeo all year, who is apparently our best defensive lineman. We'll have to see about that next year. But Charles Harris showed up from time to time. They're finding things here and there. They just got to be able to put it together a little bit better and then start working their way out. But I think that they're off in the right direction currently. I feel like this draft is going to be very telling on where they think they are in this rebuild.
You know what? My next right is so kind of perfectly synced up with this that I'm just going to kind of pivot into it.
Yeah,
so I think it's a nice compliment to this.
Mm-hmm.
I think mine was giving young players a lot of opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of hand in hand with the rebuild going in the right direction, like, at its core.
Yeah.
I think that you're absolutely right with all the young guys who stepped in and had big roles, like a Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Mm-hmm.
You got guys like that. And
Jerry, Warrior.
Well, yeah, that's the thing I was going to kind of get to. It's
Parker.
like you have these guys who are kind of a question mark. Jerry Jacobs, a Craig Reynolds, a Lee McNeil. Like, you have these guys who are young and you don't really know what you're going to get out of them. But they were featured heavily, and like a lot of them panned out to look like pretty good contributors on a bad team. Yes. But like, that's what you have to do when you're in the spot and you have a roster that's just like got holes everywhere. Someone's got to play. And it's good to see that they put a lot of young guys in those spots where a lot of them showed signs of improvement throughout the year. And like, hey, maybe with some more support around these guys, like maybe we have something here. So, it wasn't just complete incompetence from every position just because they're young players. And the more opportunities they got, the better they got. So that was something I loved watching throughout the year. Like, I didn't know who Jerry Jacobs was.
No, nobody did.
But by the time he goes out, he has a heartfelt tweet, and I'm actually sad.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's like
he's a hometown favorite now.
We're going to bite a kneecap off.
So love to see that. I think those 2 points kind of go hand in hand.
I think so too. Yeah. You know, and again, you know, this is also tying into, you know, that big question of how is this upcoming draft going to go? Who are they going to pick?
I guess I haven't really thought about that. I guess it will really show where they think they're at. I mean, look, I still think that there are a ton of holes on this roster, and they have a lot of spots to fill. But, you know, they made progress, they made steps, and this thing at the beginning of last year was, maybe besides the Texans, and actually, yeah, it's about it. Besides the Texans, I would say it was the worst looking operation on paper.
Yeah,
longest rebuild. Good luck, you know. Like now, a year in, I'm feeling definitely a lot better.
Yeah, took a good step this past year.
And we're just chugging Kool-Aid.
Yeah. All
right, I'm going to end this on one more note. It's got to be a wrong, unfortunately, because I just jumped the gun and did my last right. That's okay. This is a big one for me. Addressing wide receiver. Yeah, I think they had zero excuse all year long. To like, I know Amon-Ra panned out and looked pretty good at the end of the year. I know that we had Tyrell Williams at the beginning of camp, and whatever. But like, dude, there was a stretch there around the trade deadline where nothing was happening, and like, I couldn't believe the amount of effort that was being put into them. Like, there were reports like, oh, maybe they're interested in trading for a receiver, whatever. There were guys in the street you could have signed, and they ultimately got Josh Reynolds, who ended up being a contributor. But like, yeah, for a while it was just like, what are we doing? We have absolutely zero talent at wide receiver, and this is turning into a dumpster fire. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown really heating up at the end of the year made that narrative disappear a little bit for me, but still was a constant struggle throughout the season.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I mean, I can almost, again, this kind of, my devil's advocate play here pans back to my last positive where, you know, like they're doing this rebuild from the inside out, and maybe they just feel like, what's the point? You know, like they're a 3-13 team currently.
But if you really want to see what you got with Goff, you need to give him something.
Yeah, and I think that they will. You know, it's his first year, you know, and even with nothing, he was proving towards the end that, you know, he can be competent back there. So I think that will be addressed moving forward. I think that, you know, they just wanted to get their feet in the water, start building up the lines, and then eventually start working their way out. They're also without Hawk all year.
Yeah, but I think we're not aligned on this, because it's just like, there's no excuse that you could have just picked up the phone, called 3 free agent wide receivers, and said, come in, sign on the practice squad. If you stick around, you're decent, fine.
But like, this also goes back against of what you were saying. Who are you going to call off the free agent list that's not 28? That's not old. You were saying get the young guys playing time. He's taken, if you're bringing some
young guys besides Amon-Ra at the receiver position need to get play time? Tell me one.
I mean, Khalif Raymond wasn't great, but
he's also like 26, 27. He's not a rookie.
All right. Well, how old is Josh Reynolds?
About the same.
All right. Well, you bringing in Golden Tate, that dinosaur is going to be taking away snaps.
I
don't know who else you would have brought in from a free agency standpoint. Because, I mean, who could you have brought in?
Look, it would have been a pretty mediocre list to choose from, but it would have been something. It would have been something better than Tom Kennedy. And, you know,
Tom Kennedy's got a cannon arm.
All right. Well, let's be done with this.
Okay. Let's go ahead and close.